Most of the time when I'm fishing on canals, I tend to target perch and zander, but there's also some fantastic pike fishing to be found on many canals all across the country, and that's what I'm targeting today. So I'm going to be talking through with you some of the techniques, tactics and lures that I like to use for targeting pike on canals. The conditions are forecast to be a little bit against us today. The rain is meant to get heavier as the day goes on, but hopefully it holds off for a little bit to give us some slightly drier conditions, and fingers crossed we get a few fish on the bank as well. I've just made my first few casts, and the lure I've decided to start with is a chatterbait. It's one of my favourite types of lures for targeting all predators really, but especially for pike. And it's the kind of lure that can work really well in coloured water like what we're fishing in today. That flat blade at the front of the chatterbait just causes tons of vibration. I mean, you can really feel it through the rod tip. It's just like fishing a crankbait, really. And when rigged with a trailer, such as a Zander Pro Shad, which is what I've decided to start with, rigging on this chatterbait, it's a lure that gives off a completely different movement to any other kind of lure out there. And it's just an awesome pike catcher. So that's what I'm starting with. I'll persevere with this for a little bit, and then if I haven't had any bites after a little while, I'll try something a little bit different. Well, I was just going to explain to you actually that there are different areas of canals that can be worth trying, where you've often got a good chance of hooking a pike, where pike often hold up. One of those areas is right along the bank, especially in coloured water, and just as I was about to lift that chatterbait out of the water, bang! That fish took it. It's not a monster, but it's a start. I've just changed the trailer on this chatterbait to the UV pearl coloured Zander Pro Shad instead of the hot olive, to help it stand out a little bit more in this coloured water. And first cast turned out to be a good change of colour. Often where you find one pike, there's a good chance you'll find others as well, and that can be for a few different reasons. It could be because there's an abundance of bait fish here. It could be because it's a particularly deep stretch of canal. So what I'll do is I'll have a few more casts with this chatterbait, and then if I haven't had any more takes, I might try something a little bit different, something with a different profile and that gives off a completely different action as well. So I'm thinking the Pro Grub at the moment, so in fact I might even finish this cast and then I'll have a change. I'm fishing with my dad today, and he's also got off to a quick start as well, landing this pike, but he's fishing slightly differently to me. So he's fishing a spinning outfit, and he's got a 10cm spiky shad on there, rigged on a 10g jig head. He's just been fishing that on a straight retrieve, and this pike came along and nailed it. You may have seen recently that Jason Stokes did a video talking about the 8cm Pro Grub. Today I'm going to fish its bigger brother. This is the 12cm Pro Grub. That's rigged on a 10g 5.0 jig head. So it's something with a completely different profile and action to what I've been using previously with the chatterbait. One thing that I will quickly point out, seeing as I have the lure and trace in my hand, is that I know some guys like to fish fluorocarbon on smaller rivers and canals and even other places for targeting pike. Personally, I'm a massive fan of trace wire, and I prefer to stick to using traces just to be on the safe side. This is a 40cm 12 kilo trace. Something that I like to do when I'm fishing a bait casting outfit and targeting pike is, before I tie the trace on, I cut off a small piece of rig tubing, about an inch or so, and slide it onto the braid before I tie my trace on. So if you are fishing in really coloured water and you retrieve the trace all the way back to your feet and you get to where the swivel is, that little bit of rig tube in there will stop it going through the tip ring, it will stop damaging your knot, and it will save your tip ring too. So the first key point really is identifying your target really. So would you like to target big pike, or are you out to just fish for jacks and have a lot of fun? Today we're here to fish for anything and whatever turns up on the day, just to have some fun in the rain. So I'm fishing smaller lures in the range and not concentrating on the bigger stuff. And I'm just going to talk through with you some of the different styles of lures that I might use on a day like today, some of the different profiles, colours, and why I might choose those different options as well. So today I started off using a chatterbait, and there are a lot of reasons that I've already explained why chatterbaits and spinnerbaits, lures with big profiles, are a great type of lure to start with when fishing on a coloured canal. You can add even more movement to those lures by adding a trailer such as a shad, a curltail. Today I've mainly been fishing shads as trailers, and the great thing is that Fox Rage have a fantastic range of different shads. So you have the Zander Pro shad, the spiky shad, the slick shad. There are also other replicants that you can fish as well, but today I started off with a Zander Pro shad as a trailer, and the reason for that is because if you look at the paddle tails on each of the first three shads that I mentioned, the Zander Pro shad has got the thickest and heaviest paddle tail, so when you're retrieving it through the water, that's the tail that's going to displace the most amount of water. Spiky shads and the slick shads have a thinner, lighter paddle tail to them, and what this is ideal for is when you want to fish really slowly. So those last two shads you can fish a little bit slower than the Zander Pro shad. These can be ideal for fishing in really cold conditions when the pike are lethargic and you just want to slow down that little bit. Sometimes little changes like that can make all the difference on a tough day's fishing. So changing different paddle tails when you're out on a day's fishing is something I really like to experiment with, which leads me on to my next point, and that is trying different profiles of lures. So, I mean, I've got the three shads that I've mentioned here already, and one other addition as well, which is the Pro Grub, and you can all see they're each slightly different to each other. So if you want something to really stand out, especially in the coloured water, the Zander Pro shad has a very deep body, and what this also does is it has a rolling action as well when it's rigged on a jig head, so it swims from side to side almost a little bit like a crankbait. So that's a really good one to try in coloured water. The spiky shad is completely different, so it has a much slimmer profile to it, but it also has the addition of the spikes as well, which give off a different action, a different kind of vibration as well, and a different profile, so something else to try on the day. And then for fishing that little bit more subtle with an even thinner body, and also a slot underneath for if you want to rig Texas style, the slick shad is a really good one to try. Moving on to other types of lures, we also have curltails and creature baits in our range. So the Pro Grub has a big, wide curltail to it. So when fished on a straight retrieve, even the slowest of retrieves, it has a fantastic twirling action to it. These can really work well, especially on pressured canals. So ringing the changes can sometimes produce a couple more fish. Crayfish aren't really the first thing that springs to mind when you think of what a pike's diet consists of, but in a lot of the canals around my area there are lots of crayfish, and as well as the silverfish, it's another food source for the pike, and I've even caught pike that have coughed up crayfish before as well. You might have seen in a video where I was fishing on Pittsford Reservoir a couple of years ago in Northamptonshire, where I was using chatterbaits and I had a critter rigged on there as a trailer, and I caught a pike that actually coughed up a crayfish as we were fishing. So anyway, back to the main point. Creature baits are fantastic lures for pike. I think they're really underrated. People think of them as a lure mainly for perch and chub, but fishing a critter hopped along the bottom, whether that's Texas rigged or on a normal jig head, or as a trailer on a chatterbait or a spinnerbait, it's a really good lure to try, especially when the pike have seen lots of shads and other types of lures as well. So add this one to your arsenal too. Well, whilst I've been talking to you about the different types of lures, Dad's been cleaning up himself and managed to catch this pike. So I see you've caught that on a 7.5 centimetre replicant. Were you fishing that on a straight retrieve?
Yeah, no, I was, yeah. No, I just whammed it. It was really good.
Yeah, so the replicant's got a big paddle tail to it. A little bit like the Zander Pro Shad, it produces lots of movement. So that's another really good lure to try when you're fishing in coloured water.
Yeah, you can also jig them as well.
Yeah. So we'll slip this one back, and I think I need to catch up a little bit. When I'm fishing, I'm constantly racking my brains about different types of lures to try, what colours I should be using depending on where I am at any given point. And it's an interesting subject really, because I mean, it's always good to try different lures, and I'm really going to mix things up today. But there are times where if you're confident with one particular type of lure, a particular colour, sometimes even if you're not getting bites, just sticking at it all day or for a good few hours with that one lure can really pay off. Sometimes it can be just down to finding the fish. But a lot of the time I really like to experiment. I'm always out trying lures and I really enjoy that side of things. So I'm sure I'll be giving a few more lures a swim before the end of the day. The rain's really coming down now. I've just had to put my hood up. But it's interesting because today actually reminds me of a day that I was fishing on this canal in this exact spot, in these exact conditions, when the rain was absolutely pouring down, and I was only 11 at the time, and I was fishing with my dad, and we only caught one fish on the day, but at the time it was my personal best pike. It was 18 pound 10, so I was absolutely blown away at the size of the fish, and that's a pretty big pike for a small canal like this. That was a PB for quite a few years until I managed to catch a much bigger pike. Well, I absolutely obliterated my PB with a 29 pounder from Grapham. Oh, I just had a hit. Right, let's get that back down there. Well, there's a boat coming, so I'm just going to make a very quick short cast. Yeah, here we go. Oh, it's a stick. I really thought that was a fish. That was a bit daft. I'd had quite a few casts in this swim before I had a take. This pike took and then took again, and on the third occasion I managed to hook it. And yeah, it took a Zander Pro Shad, 10 centimetre version, fished on a straight retrieve, and it looks like at some point in this pike's life something has taken this fish as well. I wonder if it's that 18 pound pike I caught here when I was 11. I'm not too sure about that, but we'll slip this one back, and hopefully if there are some bigger pike about, we might hook one of them. You never know. We'll have to wait and see. When you're fishing small shads like this and small soft baits, there's not really the need for a stinger. If a pike really wants it, it's got a big mouth, and I mean that was a really quite a small pike, but it still managed to engulf this 10 centimetre Zander Pro Shad. Although on that occasion I didn't actually need to use a set of pliers. It is always very important to have them with you at all times, because you never know when you may get a deep hooked fish. I also carry a pair of cutters with me just in case. You always have to be prepared. Well, to say it's been wet has been an understatement. I must admit I haven't seen many people walking along the towpath today, and I don't blame them, to be honest, but they haven't caught any fish, so I've enjoyed braving the conditions actually. It's always nice to get out on the bank. But most importantly, I hope that you've learnt a few things that you can apply to pike fishing on canals in the future. Fishing medium-sized lures, such as the zander pro shad and a lot of other soft baits in the fox rage range, sort of in anything between 10 and 14 centimetres are really good sizes for pike of all sizes really, you know, from jacks all the way up to big fish too. So, you know, I haven't fished this stretch of canal for a few years actually, but it's been nice getting back on here and checking it out and having a change of locations. So if you've got a canal near you, why not check it out for a few pike and give it a go, see what happens. And yeah, I think I'm going to get out of the rain now. Well, that was going to be my last cast. I cast it as far upstream as possible, and just a few reel turns in, it was nicely interrupted by this fish here. Well, this is the first time I've had to use pliers today, because most of the fish have been quite lightly hooked, but that fish there really goes to show the importance of having a good long set of pliers. So just in case you end up having that kind of scenario where the fish really takes a liking to the lure and you need to get the hook out quickly and safely. Well, it's nice to end the day on a high note on a fish. It's a really nice looking pike as well, despite the size. So I'm going to slip him back, and then I think I'm going to head back to the car and get out of this rain for a little bit.